Hello, everyone. I'm just going to give it one more minute as folks are starting to join, and then we will go ahead and kick off. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's Center for Dementia Respite Innovation CDRI informational webinar. We are thrilled to yet again be offering this opportunity. This is our third year now of having this webinar and having the funding opportunity through CDRI. My name is Isabella Marini. I am the Senior Associate Director for the Center for Dementia Respite Innovation, and I really work to oversee the day-to-day management of the center. And the purpose of today's webinar is really to help applicants understand what are the goals of this project and this opportunity, what are the different requirements and criteria, what are the different required measurements, outcomes, the application structure, the procedures that we ask you to follow, and then we will have an overview of the budgeting and match requirements. And then we do have the Q&A open, so please submit any questions through the Q&A function. We will answer those as we go through. We'll be monitoring that closely, but any questions that might not get answered during today's webinar will be answered and posted on our updated frequently asked questions document that is going to be linked onto the center's webpage at alz.org/CDRI. So as a reminder, the webinar is being recorded and will also be posted on to the center's webpage in a few days following. Before we go ahead and kick off with the RFA review, I just want to acknowledge the different team members we have here. So we have representatives from all of our partners. We've got the Alzheimer's Association, and from our side, we are the lead on the project led by Dr. Sam Fazio. We have Lorna Profiter, who helps in leadership as well. We've got Adina Wolf and Matt Delvin, who are on our more finance side and will help keep everyone on track from a budget and invoicing standpoint. And then we have Lauren Stratton, who is more involved with the program evaluation requirements of this grant. And then we have our partners from US Aging. We have Laura Jane and Natalie. They are our wonderful technical assistants that, if awarded, you will work very closely with to monitor your program success and the impact that you're making. And then I'm remiss. We just hired Caitlin last week, and she is also on this call, and she is through the Alzheimer's Association, and she helps supports me with all sorts of different administrative tasks. And then last but not least, from our partner at the University of Minnesota, we've got Roblyn Birkland, who helps support again with the program evaluation requirements. So now I'm going to kick us off through a review of the RFA, just to highlight some of the critical points that you should be um, paying attention to as you're gearing up to apply for this funding opportunity. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay. All right. And I apologize for the technical difficulty of the slowness of the PDF loading. If you have not already read this, please take some time to do so. It is a lengthy document, but it will ensure that you have all the information you need as you prepare to craft your applications. So first, just to talk a little bit around how CDRI came about, the Alzheimer's Association received a $25 million grant from the Administration for Community Living focused on increasing the availability and improving the delivery of person-centered dementia-specific respite care, really with a focus on innovation, collaboration, impact, accessibility, affordability, and sustainability. And the programs that we are looking to fund are really focused on being cost-efficient, effective, strengths-based, again, person-centered, and innovative models of dementia-specific respite care. So when you open the RFA, which is linked on our webpage, you will first see this purple box that's kind of just a good summary of the RFA as a whole. We've got first here our eligibility criteria, and I will note I'm not going to read everything word for word through this document, but I wanted to take a moment to highlight some of the most critical pieces so that you're prepared. So first, you do need to be a domestic, public, or private, for-profit or nonprofit organization to be eligible for CDRI funding. You need to either be already providing respite or prepared to provide respite in this for this award. We have two different award types, our startup and our pilot awards. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the differences between those later on. But with that, you also there is a time requirement of you need to be serving clients within 3 months for a pilot award, and serving clients within 6 months of a startup award. So that's one of our expectations that's noted here. We do have also in here that you need to be able to demonstrate that there's a pre-existing need within your community, and this is really showcased through not only demonstrating that need, but what is innovative about your program. And sometimes those go hand in hand together. And then one also really important factor I want to call out here is that for the purposes of CDRI based respite programming, we do ask that caregivers are not required to participate in your CDRI funded programming. We understand that there are a lot of really great, meaningful programs out there that are more focused for that dyad support. And we do not discredit the value of those programs, but for the purposes of this, we're really focused on giving opportunities for caregivers to have a true break if they would like it and would to be able to do whatever they need to be doing in that free time. But you can add it as optional if there is that dyad component of your requested programming. So just looking at a few key dates, following this webinar, the next key date is going to be the required letter of intent that is due on March 2nd by midnight Eastern. The application full date is March 30th, again at midnight Eastern. You will be notified by March 5th if your LOI was accepted and you are deemed eligible to apply. So please be on the lookout for that communication that will come from me. Again, that'll be on March 5th. Following the March 30th due date of the applications, we will notify any grantees that were awarded by May 15th. You will also receive a notification if you were not selected for funding. And then the participation period will kick off on July 1st of 2026 and will run through June 30th of 2027 if you're a pilot award, or 2028 if you are a 2-year startup award. The total funding available that we have is $4 million, and the number of applications to be awarded will depend on the variety and the portfolio of the applications we receive. The next section in the RFA is really more background, and I won't go through this, but I do encourage you to take a moment to read this to really understand why this funding opportunity came about, and the importance of respite care and all that it can do to help support our caregivers. We have a few different definitions that are represented here. Again, I won't read all of these, but the one that I did want to take a moment to just acknowledge and talk a little bit more through is innovation. So, innovation is something that's really important to CDRI. It is in our name, and this is what we're really looking for to be weighed the heaviest in our scoring criteria for your applications. And innovation can look very different for different programs, for different communities, for different care settings. When we use the word innovation, I want to be clear that we aren't necessarily saying you need to buy into the latest tech or AI solution that might be out there. Innovation can look different just by creating a new program offering, for example, that might be unique or it's evidence-based. And an example of that could be music therapy. You're integrating music therapy into a program that did not have it. Another opportunity for innovation in your application would be providing a new offering to a new geographic area. So maybe you're in a very rural community and there are no respite offerings, and bringing a respite offering, that could be your innovation to that community. You could be addressing an unmet community need, and this can look very different. Again, some examples we have there are maybe you're suggesting overnight respite options or doing respite services on weekends. Solving a problem in a new way. Example we used here was a mall-based respite program that we funded in year one, taking that dead mall space and turning it into respite in just a normal public setting was a really unique idea, and saw really great success with that model. And then the last kind of deciphering determination for innovation here is utilizing a new service delivery method. So, an example we used here was intergenerational offerings. So, can you lean on med students, college students, even high school students? We've even seen preschool students getting involved with respite offerings. So, we really want you to think outside of the box here. We want to see things that are really different than the outside norms of what is typically offered in a respite program. So please definitely think through this piece and really hone in on what that innovation is going to be in your application. So again, we are seeking applications from existing or new providers of respite care to help develop these innovative dementia-capable services. We do have, like I mentioned, two different types of awards. The pilot award is for any organization that is already offering respite services, or perhaps they are already serving individuals with dementia, but they're looking to enhance their program in some capacity. And I do want to note that for this, we're not looking at just expanding your existing program to have an additional day, or maybe you're adding 2 hours to your day. That's really not the type of innovation that we're looking for with this funding opportunity. We really want to see what that enhancement's going to be from a meaningful programming standpoint, and a larger enhancement from that stage. And then the other opportunity that we have is our startup awards. So our startup awards are for any organization that has never provided respite services before, or has never served individuals with dementia, but they're looking to get into this space. You can apply for those startup awards. And the startup awards are for 2 years of funding. The pilot awards are for 1 year of funding. Um, as I mentioned earlier, there is this 2 months, within 2 months of an award, you should be serving individuals through the pilot awards, and within 6 months, you should be serving participants within startup for the startup awards. One of the requirements for this as well is to identify a lead staff member. This is a really critical component for this grant. We ask that the lead staff member be allocated to at least 50% of their time to this project. There are a lot of programs that we have seen that really benefited from having somebody 100% allocated to this. That is not a requirement, but we do ask that you have at least 50% of their time allocated to the grant. And this person's really going to be the liaison for all of the different program elements and requirements, such as meeting with the TAs, participating in the education opportunities that I'll touch on in a few minutes, and then really being just kind of the lead in terms of funneling all of the information that we are providing to you, from person-centered care to sustainability to meaningful engagement. So we really do lean on this person. So when you're identifying this person, ensure that it is somebody that is knowledgeable in this space and has the ability and the capacity to play this role. So in terms of the award amounts, for the startup awards, we will offer up to $100,000 over the course of 2 years. For pilot awards, we will offer up to $125,000 over 1 year. One thing to note is that for pilot awards, grantees are eligible to receive 20% of their funding in advance to help support getting off the ground with their new enhancements. But these funds are going to be subject to making sure that we receive what you spent them on, and different documentation requirements that are involved with those, with the 20% advance. I'm not going to go too much into the finance pieces because Adina and Matt are going to spend some time running through those, and what some of those allowable expenses and limitations are. So bear with me as we scroll through this. I did want to take the opportunity to just touch on a few of the different support and education offerings that you would receive if you are selected as a grantee. And some of these are actually made publicly available as well for anybody who is interested in learning more. So each year of our funding initiative, we're creating a new training module. We have two training modules that are currently out: the fundamentals of person-centered dementia care and respite care environments, and then meaningful engagement for dementia-specific respite care environments. And the lead staff member is required to take both of these training modules, but we highly encourage sharing with all of your staff because it's definitely beneficial for everyone. Then we also offer bi-monthly keys to sustainability webinars, and these are really just to help develop and improve your programs in terms of service capacity and then keeping sustainability front of mind. Once the grant period ends, we want to help ensure that you are set up for success to continue offering your services. We also will be offering monthly learning collaboratives, and these are going to be an opportunity for one, all of us to get together and to provide any updates that are going on within the programs, reminders, due dates. But then each month there will be a new topic selected based upon what we're hearing through our grantees, based upon the different trends we're seeing, and really hone in on a topic to provide an offering for peer-to-peer learning. And so you will have the opportunity to not only engage with staff, leadership, experts in the field, but with one another and really do that best practice sharing and help support different challenges that you all may be experiencing. And then we also offer our yearly awardee conference where we bring all of the awardees together to learn from one another for a couple of days of best practice sharing. Here you'll see just a quick timeline of the different requirements and offerings throughout the grant period and what months they fall in. I do want to just quickly note, I'm not going to dive into what is all required in terms of the evaluation, but we do have an external evaluation that is conducted through the University of Utah and spearheaded up through the University of Minnesota. And there are going to be a few different surveys and reporting requirements that are we hold to a very high standard. They are a requirement of our funder, and we really need the compliance with our grantees and to ensure that these are completed. So if you have any questions around specifically the evaluation requirements prior to submitting your application, please reach out to cdri@alz.org. That is going to be the inbox that you can always ask any questions in, but I will make sure that anything evaluation specific is addressed through our Utah team. And then the last piece I want to highlight in the RFA before we move on is just kind of this 4.2 section where you will find all of the links to the different documents that are shared today and the different access links that you would need to complete your full application. So first, you will find the letter of intent link so you can access the link using this hyperlinked form. And again, that is due by March 2nd. You can access the full application here through the link that is linked to Submittable. That is our application platform that we utilize. You can access it even though you have not submitted an LOI yet, or if you already have submitted your LOI, it is live. But please know that there is a page that Laura Jane will share when she goes through the application. One of the questions is asking if you did submit a LOI, and we will do a cross check that if you did not submit an LOI, your application will unfortunately not be able to move forward in the review process. So please be sure to submit that accordingly. And then it'll go through and talk a little bit more about the different sections, but Laura Jane is going to talk through those. So that is the main pieces from the RFA that I wanted to highlight. So next I'm going to pass it over to Laura Jane to take us through Submittable and walk through what the actual application looks like.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Bear with me while we have our transition of screens. All right. So as Isabella mentioned, the link to Submittable is linked in the RFA document itself. And when you arrive on the page, this is what you will see. Before you submit your application through Submittable, you will need to create an account. This just allows you to use some of the save functions. We use Submittable because it does tend to be fairly user-friendly. So once you land on this page after you've created your account, just wanted to note that the eligibility and expectations are listed in the guideline toggle right here. And this does mirror the same criteria that's on the first page of the RFA. So if you need a quick refresher on what that eligibility looks like and what those expectations are before you begin, they are all listed right here. And then we also have the cross-reference back to the RFA. So when you are ready, you will select Apply, and you will see that those expectations and eligibility requirements are listed again. just so that is super clear for everyone. Um, the first section is eligibility checklist and assurances. And I'll just go through these item by item, and you will see that these fields are required. So you will not be able to move past this screen until you have answered these questions. So the first one is if if applicable based on state requirements, is your organization licensed or certified and in good standing with the appropriate organizations and entities? So I'll select yes for the sake of our time today. Has your organization or lead staff member demonstrated capacity to provide culturally competent, dementia-specific respite services, ensuring sensitivity to the needs of the community served? We'll say yes. Does your organization commit to providing accessible respite services, including considerations for individuals with disabilities or other accessibility needs? We'll say yes again. Does your organization commit to timely and transparent reporting on respite service activities, challenges, and successes? This is a federally funded grant, so we are held to a high standard of accountability. Do just want to note the reporting expectation there. Can your organization demonstrate that there is a pre-existing need within the community for proposed programs? Say yes. For pilot programs, does your organization understand and agree to launch the proposed program and begin serving clients within 2 months of the start of the participation period? We're going to say yes. For a 2-year startup award, since in this example, we are saying that we're applying for a pilot, I'm going to say that this is not applicable. Does your organization have standard operating policies and procedures, or are they in development? Does your organization have adequate financial and administrative systems in place to manage the federal award? I will say yes. And then when our colleagues at the Alzheimer's Association, Adina and Matt, will walk us through the budget and some of the financial requirements, they'll chat with us a little bit more about those details. Are you a current recipient of CDRI funding? If by chance one of our current grantees is on the call right now, please note that you as a current grantee are not eligible. So I will say no. Did you submit the required letter of intent as Isabella referenced? And again, we will say yes. And I will click next. So this will move us on to the next section that should be pretty simple organizational details. Do just want to note here between these first two fields that if you are doing business as a different organization or a different program, we will need those details distinguished here between your organization name and the name of your proposed respite program. And then your employer identification number, as well as the address, the contact name for the application, your title as the person that is applying, email address, phone number, website, basic contact information. Does your organization currently offer respite services? Which best describes your organization, either for-profit or nonprofit? And then what type of setting will the services be in? We have community-based, adult day centers, faith-based, in-home care, or other. If you select and identify other, please note what other means, just so we have that detail. And then we really get into the bulk and the meat of what we are looking for the content of your application in the next couple of sections. So we have the statement of purpose. And the two prompts that you have here below are define the organization's goal for participation in this program and your focus area of work and offerings, including its importance, and demonstrate your program's understanding and responsiveness to unmet needs of that community. And specifics are very important there. And also in these fields, please note that there is a limit of certain amounts of words that are notated in the right corner. So for this particular prompt, we're looking for 250 words or less. With the proposed project scope, you have 2 additional prompts. Provide a detailed project description that includes how your program will develop or improve the delivery of a person-centered dementia-specific respite care delivery, and define project goals and milestones. There, we're looking for a little bit more. We are looking for 800 words. And then project innovation, as Isabella mentioned before, we really are looking for innovative service delivery, and this is your opportunity in 250 words or less to detail what that innovation is going to look like with your proposal. And then the next one is around sustainability. As with any grant-funded project, we want to see what the long-term plan for success is going to be beyond CDRI. So we would like to see detailed program plans for sustainability, 200 words or less there. And then organizational capacity. We really want you to use these 500 words in this section to tell us about your organization's previous experience working with people living with dementia and their caregivers, as well as any current respite offerings. Describe your organization's current client reach, projected reach with the new program, and capacity to expand. Detail any community partnerships and existing or potential collaborations that will support the success of your proposal moving forward, and really illustrate the organization's capacity to manage the fiscal and/or administrative requirements of the program, including your internal process for tracking expenses across funding streams and your organization's previous experience receiving grants or federal funding. If your organization has never received grant funding, describe what measures you have taken to ensure readiness to manage those kinds of funds. And then we also just want you to describe your past experience with survey and evaluation. Really paint us the picture here of what operationalizing this grant does look like and will look like. And again, that's a 500-word limit. And then, as mentioned in the RFA, we also want to hear more about the lead staff member. This will be, we're looking for their name, their time allocation, what their current role is, a brief rationale for why this individual is the right fit for the dementia-specific experience for this grant, and detail the plan for leadership involvement and support of this grant. Then we will want the contact information for the lead staff member so we can get in touch with them at the onset of the award. And what is your estimated start date to begin services? We want to know the date and hours of your proposed program. And during the grant period, give us an estimate of how many unduplicated individuals you expect to benefit from respite services. Outline any person-centered dementia-specific training or education that you're planning to use for volunteers and staff. And then comes the section that you will be uploading additional documents. So letters of support, a minimum expectation for this is 2, no more than 5. Also, the work plan template, which my colleague Natalie will delve further into, should be attached here. And then the resume or CV of the lead staff member, the proposed budget, along with the justification that my colleagues Adina and Matt will tell us more about, the W-9, and if applicable, proof of licensure. And before I hand it over to my colleague Natalie to tell us more about what that work plan template entails, just a couple of quick tips. Respond to these prompts, particularly in the section that I just went through, where we're looking at your statement of purpose, the proposed project scope. We suggest drafting those in a Word document that will help you edit and count for those words, and then copy them into Submittable. Also, particularly on statement of purpose, proposed project scope, project innovation, sustainability efforts, and capacity, please make sure that you're responding to the details below and that you're not just copying and pasting from one section to the other. Those really are distinct questions that we are looking for different responses to. And with that, when you're finished with all of those fields, you will check agree to terms of use and click apply. And just a reminder again, make sure that you have set up your account through Submittable so you're able to save and work on this over time if needed. So with that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Natalie.
Great, thanks so much, Laura Jane. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here and walk you through the process for setting up your work plan for the application. So when you click that link that Laura Jane mentioned, it's going to take you over to a workbook in Google Sheets. And so what I'm going to walk you through here is our newest version of the work plan, but both versions collect the same information. So not to worry, we're going to walk you through all the steps here. So the version that you're going to get is going to be in read only. So you're going to want to start out by going to File and download a copy of it. And so then once you get your copy open, you're going to basically be laying out your timeline for the grant here. So you'll want to detail what your grant deliverables are, which are going to be your goals, and then the steps you're going to take to reach your goals, which are the action items. So this work plan is really going to kind of paint a picture of how your grant work will progress. And so we're going to start here. These fields will all be blank when you get your work plan. And so you're just going to go through and enter in your organization name, your address, the work plan title, which can just be your organization's name and work plan, the name of your respite program, and then also include any of the dementia specific person-centered trainings that you're going to be including for your staff and volunteers on the project. As you keep going down here, you're going to get to the award type. And so you'll select if you're applying for a pilot or a startup award. The startup awards, just to clarify, are the 2-year ones. And then you're going to include what your respite setting is. And this will be open for multiple selections. So for example, if you are going to do a program at an adult day center, you can select group respite and adult day center. Or if you're doing in-home, you'll be able to select in-home. And then this last part here is going to be for your project proposal overview, which is just a brief summary of your program, where you're going to want to include an outline of the innovative components that your grant's going to include. Okay, and so once you've got that information all entered, you're going to go into the next page, and that is where you're going to enter your goal and action items. Okay, so here you're going to begin by using this little toggle here to select whether you're going to put a goal or an action item in. So with the goals, you're going to just click for what your overall deliverables are for the grant, and you'll select goal here. And then you're going to want to put in a title of what that goal is. And then you'll also include a description if you want to put in some more information on details on that goal, the start date when you expect to start working on that goal, and then the due date when you expect to have it completed. And so that's what it's going to look like basically once you've got it all filled in there. And then the next step is to go ahead and add in your action items. And so the action items are just the steps you're going to take to get to the goal. And you'll do it in the same way by adding a title for the action item, what that is. And if you have any additional details or description for it, you'll add that in the description section, a start date for that, and then the due date. And then just also one thing to note here is as you're entering the action items, it's going to populate automatically this last column here. And so it's going to associate each of those action items to the goal above it. So just make sure to note, as you're entering your action items, that they always associate with the goal above it. And you can enter, as many action items as you need to accomplish that goal. And just be sure if you're entering extra items, and extra lines, that you do it within the goal. So yeah, that's basically how it works. You'll continue adding goals and action items till you've entered all of your grant deliverables here. This is an example of what it could look like, and it just clearly lays out kind of the stages of your grant and how you intend for the grant to proceed over the year. Okay, so that's pretty much it. And then I'll go ahead and turn this over now to Matt and Adina so they can walk you through the budgeting process.
Thanks, Natalie. Here, let me share my screen. I am going to walk you through highlights of the funding award section of the RFA, and then Matt is going to do a walkthrough of the budget template that you'll need to fill out. Okay. Okay, so this is section 2 in the RFA. As Isabella mentioned before, there's 2 types of awards: startup, which are 100,000 over 2 years, and the pilot awards, which are a maximum of 125 over 1 year. When you're developing your budget, please make sure that you aren't going over that amount. We won't be able to fund a higher request than the amounts that are listed. And then, as Isabella mentioned, for the pilot awards, they will be eligible to receive a 20% funding in advance to get the program started. And those advances will be subject to the same reporting requirements as the rest of the grant, and they have to be spent in the first 3 months. This program is a cost reimbursement grant, meaning other than the advance, you need to incur the expenses and then we will reimburse them for you. And just kind of a note on financial management for this grant. There will be documentation requirements for the expenses that you will have to submit along with your invoices, which I'll talk about in a minute. So really think through if you have the capacity for the administrative and financial requirements to be able to isolate your expenses and document them and fill out invoices. Okay, I'm gonna scroll down to the next section. Matt's going to cover fringe rates and indirect costs when he goes through the template, but I'm going to talk about the monthly invoicing. So if you're a startup, then you will start invoicing right with the first month. If you're a pilot, it will be after 3 months with the advance. Also, just a note, expenses need to be incurred during the performance period of the grant. So meaning for this, July 1st, you can't start making purchases or incurring costs prior to July 1st. We will be doing a mandatory onboarding meeting where we will walk through exactly what the requirements are for backup and how to fill out our invoice template. And Matt and I also do provide technical assistance, but the requirements for the monthly invoicing is that you'll need to have supporting documentation for salary and fringe benefits. You will need to have time and effort reports, meaning you will need to have reports that demonstrate the time that was spent by staff on the grant, and you need to use that in order to determine how the salary that you're expensing on the report. So we'll need both of that. We'll need supporting salary backup, and we will need time and effort reports. And then for whatever other expenses, we'll need receipts and backup for that. We will have an invoice template for you that gets filled out each month. And all of the supporting documentation will be required monthly to be submitted along with that. And then just generally, you will be required to manage your budget, making sure that you're staying within the lines that you listed in the budget and that you're watching your cumulative totals for that. All right, I'm going to quickly touch through some of the allowable expenses. This, of course, isn't all of them, but just some sort of highlights that we typically see and want to call out. The first one is personnel. One, please note the federal salary cap But also please make sure that for personnel, you're only referring to employees of your organization. If you are using contractors or external consultants, then that will need to go in the miscellaneous section. And we're going to refer to that in a couple other places, but I just wanted to make sure that I called out that distinction. All right. Let's see. Outreach and engagement, please make sure you read through that to sort of see what's allowable. Essentially, it does need to be tied to your respite program for the grant. Technology, all technology over $1,000 needs to be specified in your budget. For transportation, if the transportation is being expensed by your organization, then that needs to be done in the form of mileage. So you would just need to be tracking mileage logs and then using the federal rate for that. If the transportation is through an outside vendor, then that's fine. Just make sure that you're detailing in your budget, because if it's an outside vendor, then it's going to be the vendor's invoice, not mileage. If it's your organization, it does need to be mileage. For marketing and communication, I just want to call out that we have a $10,000 cap, so please be mindful of that. And that does include staff time as well as other expenses. And again, here's another section kind of calling out consultants and contractors. Again, you need to outline their hourly rate. You need to outline what it's for. Please make sure it's not in the personnel section. And you can kind of go through the definitions here of what qualifies as a contractor. Okay, funding limitations. So here are things that really need to not be in your budget. Okay. For starters, it should not be used for research or additional evaluation. Please make sure you read 2.43 double dipping carefully. If you have other federal grants, then you need to be tracking expenses carefully and making sure that you're not commingling these. You cannot use another federal grant for your match. It needs to be non-federal dollars. And again, you can't be using the grant funds to offset existing resources and replace other funding. Let's see. Capital expenses are not allowable in this grant, nor is rent or leasing of existing spaces. In a lot of instances, this is allowable for match, but it isn't allowable in the award. Okay, and again, 2.46, here's just another paragraph about contractors and being mindful of how much you're using them. We don't want to see a budget where you don't have any staff and kind of everyone is listed in contractors instead. Okay. And also, you cannot purchase a vehicle. That's prohibited, and that is prohibited for both the award and for match. Gift certificates and gift cards are prohibited. I want to especially call that out because that's kind of been an issue in the past. We will not allow those. And also, we cannot be used for the funding of any items that could be considered restraints. So, for example, bed alarms, chair alarms, that type of thing is not an allowable cost. All right, the last section I'm going to go over is match requirements. So this grant has a mandatory 25% match, meaning you must match the total project cost 25%. This can be a combination of time and effort of your staff. It can be in kind, like volunteer hours. It can be either expense or in kind of things like supplies and materials. In section 2.52, I just kind of want to point out, so there's no confusion here, it's detailing out cash match and in-kind match, meaning for cash match, that can be direct expenses you're incurring, so supplies, or if you're using some staff time. It doesn't mean that for the budget you can just list like cash from a source, from like a foundation or something. We need to know what the expense is that's being incurred, that you're matching. The delineation here between cash and in kind is just sort of what type of expense. In kind would be, again, the best example is volunteer hours. That is allowable. You'll just want to kind of keep a log of that. We've listed what the current volunteer rate is for that. If you get in-kind donations of, let's say, program supplies, that's fine too. That'll just need to be appropriately documented from the funder. 2.53 explains the math calculation for this, but Matt will also go over this. We already have the formula in there for you, but just so you're aware, for this type of federal grant, it's total project cost. It's not 25% of your award, it's 25% of the total. So this is explaining how that's calculated, but again, our template is going to calculate your required match for you.
Hey, Adina, I'm so sorry to
Yes.
interrupt you, but the RFA is not moving as you move on to the next sections, and I know you're wrapping up now,
Oh,
but
okay.
on my
Thank
first point,
you.
I could interject respectfully.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry about that. Let me scroll that. Okay. Okay. So, yeah, sorry. Right now I'm talking about the match. This is section 2.5. So you can see here we have the formula here, which is also in the template, and the description of cash match, in-kind match, and just kind of some more. Match seems to be the piece that throws people off a lot. So that's just why we wanted to make sure we have a lot of detail here on what that means. And just to be clear that it's mandatory, you need to have expenses for that, just like you do for the award. And you need to have documentation for that, just like you do for the award. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over to Matt so he can walk through the templates.
Thanks, Adina. Share my screen. All right, so I'd like to start and just talk through kind of some general formatting around the budget template itself. Similar to the work plan that Natalie went over, you'll need to download this before working in it. And then you'll notice the first tab is titled Instructions. The first thing I want to highlight here is that for a description of allowable expenses, please refer to section 2.2 to 2.3 of the RFA that Adina just went over to make sure that the expenses that you're including in your budget are allowable. You'll also notice on this tab that in column A, each of the budget lines are listed here, and the lines that correlate to those are listed as well. And then in column B, the instructions that correlate to those exact lines are included. So for example, with organization lines 2 through 4, you will fill in the highlighted cells at the top, etc. Moving on, I will note that if you're having trouble completing the template or you have questions, referring back to this first tab should give you a good amount of clarification for any of the questions you have when completing. Moving on to the other tabs, a quick note here. So you'll see budget year 1 and match year 1. For those of you who are applying for pilot awards, these are the 2 tabs that you'll be using since your award is only for 1 year. And then for those of you who are applying for startup awards that cut across 2 years, you'll be using the budget year 2 startups only tab and the match year 2 startups only tab as well. So you'll be using all 4 of these tabs here. That way we can see your budget in year 1 as well as your budget in year 2. Digging a little bit deeper into the template itself, you'll see in the top left corner, proposed start date, total project years, and organization. You'll want to fill this in with your organization's information as well as the total project year so we can see whether or not you're applying for a pilot or startup award. And then moving on to fringe, you'll notice that we put a 20% placeholder in here. You will need to update this cell based on your actual fringe rate, noting that the fringe rate cannot exceed 30%. We have a 30% cap on fringe. The indirect rate, there's a 15% indirect cost rate permitted for this grant. If you elect not to take the 15% rate, you will need to put a 0 in this cell here. It's important that you update these two cells as these are both tied to formulas that calculate in the template below. Quick note under this budget categories, input information into light blue boxes only. This isn't necessarily true. There are some boxes that are not highlighted in blue that you will need to input information into. But the key thing to remember when you're inputting information is just not to manually edit any of the cells like here that are highlighted in orange, as these contain the formulas that I previously discussed. So this first section related to personnel, you will input the name and title of each individual that will be on the grant, brief responsibilities that they will have for the project, and then you will need to include their annualized base salary. So again, annual salary needs to go in this box here, and then you will put in percent effort next to it. And then as long as you have inputted all of your information over here, it will automatically calculate your requested salary based on percent effort, and will automatically calculate your fringe based on the fringe rate that you've included, your organizational fringe rate that you've included above. And then it will give you the total cost for that individual, and you can continue adding as many people as you need over here. Next, for travel, as Adina mentioned, travel will be reimbursed in the form of mileage. We've included the federal rate here, 0.725. For this example today, we've included 100 miles. So you can see, 100 miles multiplied by the rate for $72.50 of total project cost. In the justification, you're going to want to describe the activity that pertains to the mileage and be pretty detailed in that justification so that we can see exactly what the mileage is for. Moving on to the next section, equipment purchases. One thing you really want to take note of here is that this section, equipment, only applies to single items costing more than $10,000. If you have single items that are less than $10,000, they will need to be included in either materials and supplies or miscellaneous, as equipment purchases don't get calculated in your indirect. In this section, you'll include the item description, the total cost, and then again, a very detailed budget justification as far as what the expense is and how it relates to your project. Moving on to materials and supplies. Again, you will input your item description here, the total cost here, and then again, that very detailed description of what the expense is and how it relates to your project. And we will need a justification for every single item that you enter under materials and supplies, equipment, miscellaneous, etc. Miscellaneous is exactly the same as materials and supplies as far as formatting. You'll include your item description. In this case, we've included contractor, total cost $1,500. And then here, you're going to want to describe the work that will be performed and detail the cost or duration. So number of sessions, things like that. Again, just being very detailed in your justifications. And then once you have completed everything in the top section, it's going to automatically calculate your total direct costs for you, as well as calculate your indirect cost based on whether or not you are taking that permitted 15% rate. And then your total cost down here, this is combining your direct costs and indirect costs to give you the total award amount based on the budget that you've created. Moving on to the match tab, this is the cell that Adina had referenced before. This cell has the formula that calculates your required match for the project based on your award amount. So please do not manipulate or edit this cell at all when you're creating your budget, because this is really what's going to give you your required match for the project. You'll notice it's laid out very similar to the budget tab as far as the categories: personnel, travel, materials, and supplies. You'll input your total cost for each of those lines here, and then again include that detailed narrative description. The one thing I do want to highlight here is related to volunteer hours. So hours worked by volunteers directly related to your CDRI program are allowable under match at a rate of $34.79 per hour. So for the purpose of example, we've included 350 volunteer hours. You multiply that by the volunteer rate, which gives you $12,177. Similar to the previous tab, it'll automatically calculate your total direct costs as well as your indirect costs, and then giving you your total match amount based on the match budget that you've created. A very important thing to note is that your total match amount based on the budget that you've created must either meet or exceed this required match amount. So when you are putting together your match budget, make sure that your total costs for match are at least this amount, if not higher. And then just quickly taking a look at these two tabs, they are laid out exactly the same as year one. So for those of you, again, who are applying for a startup, you will fill them out exactly the same as you do for the year one tabs. With that, that's all I really wanted to share around the template itself. If you have questions for Adina and I, make sure to pop them in the Q&A chat and we'll be sure to answer them. And I'll turn it back over to Isabella.
Wonderful. Thank you guys so much. So just a few notes. One, obviously we recognized there was a little technical glitch when Adina was going through the RFA. So I know a few folks had asked about slides. Those were not slides. She was just going through the PDF of the RFA that is linked on the web page. So if you go back to the recording and you are watching this now or watching it later, you can follow through the RFA in line of the different sections she was outlining there. That document is publicly available. The other piece I wanted to note is that Natalie did mention that there are potentially a different updated work plan template that might be coming. So right now there is one that is currently linked in the RFA that you can begin drafting in. The information that is inputted into that one is exactly the same types of information we are asking from in the updated template. It is just in a little bit of a different format with some formulas added to allow us to input into our Cumulus system that if awarded, you will work out of with your technical assistants to monitor and track all of your progress. So we are hoping to get that finalized with our vendor. And if we do move forward with changing the template, when you are notified that your LOI is eligible and you are able to apply, we will ensure that the template is linked in that notification email, as well as the slides that Natalie did share today. Those were the only actual slides that we shared. Everything else was a linked document or the RFA itself. So I just wanted to add a little bit of clarity around that we are working on that. And then my last note with the work plan, regardless if we change the template or not, your application will be eligible as long as you use one of the two templates that we have provided. So please don't stress about the fact that we might be changing it halfway through. The information is the same, and we will work with you to ensure that it is in the correct template. The next, just last piece, again, this is being recorded. It will be posted onto the webpage, alz.org/CDRI. The FAQ document will be updated and include all of the questions that were asked today. If you have any other questions following this meeting, you can reach out to cdri@alz.org. That is an inbox that I am monitoring every day. So please feel free to reach out with any type of specific questions, technical assistance. I will note that the only thing I cannot give direct feedback on is if your project scope, if you're asking if this sounds like a good idea or any type of specific feedback, because we do have to remain neutral with all of the suggested ideas. So please don't hesitate to reach out to that inbox with any additional questions. Otherwise, thank you so much for your time today, for your interest in the Center for Dementia Respite Innovation, and we look forward to reviewing all of your applications. Have a good day.